Hey, look at us. Look at us. We're back. Three of us. Me and these two guys.
We're back.
Back.
For Broncos? Is there Broncos stuff today?
Broncos offseason content, Brandon. It's heating up right now. It's heating up. Scouting Combine's right here.
There's some titillating
People are
news.
saying things.
Yeah. It's nice. We're so back. All right. A less shitty intro. We got Zach, we got Joey, and I am Brandon. Zach and Joey. They have a YouTube channel called Let's Talk Broncos. Make sure you subscribe over there. Do you guys have Broncos content every day, basically 5 days a week ish, roughly?
Yeah, around.
Yeah,
around. We would have like 5, maybe even 6 days of content usually. So please follow us at Let's Talk Broncos.
Yeah, diehard Broncos fans, please subscribe there. The whole reason I'm doing the show with them is I want people to find your YouTube channel. And it's not like if you look at Joey and Zach and go, nah, fuck those guys. There's other people over there doing videos as well.
And we just added 3 more.
Exactly.
To be announced.
It's great. I love what you guys are doing. Make sure you show them the love over there. We do have stuff to talk about because the Combine's happening. And that's when so much information gets dumped on us fans. A lot of it not true. A lot of it interesting, though. And the Broncos are meeting with quarterbacks, talking to quarterbacks this week at the Combine, guys they might draft. Other players they're talking to. And what I want to get into after we kind of go through the news that's going on there with the Broncos is the report cards. So this is the second year we got the NFLPA report cards. And this is where all the players in the organization get to anonymously grade the team. From owner to head coach to facilities to the food. And the Broncos did pretty well, all things considered. So we're going to look into that in a little bit. I'll bring up the grades so we can laugh at the other teams and their troubles and make us feel better about not being in the playoffs.
I love it. The report card is fun to look at. I like it's some of the stories that come out of this whole situation too are just ridiculous. I'm looking forward to the laugh at the other team's part.
Yeah.
It's an incredible addition from JC Treader, the president of the NFLPA. I think this is just fantastic to see. I don't know what teams are doing what. I think it's really interesting that the Chiefs overall graded out at 32nd, 3 Fs, 2 Ds. And it doesn't matter. They've got best coach or one of them. They've got best quarterback or one of them, and they win it all again.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that team has won 2 Super Bowls, and the players were still like, we have the worst owner, F. The F minus. I believe Clark got an F minus. And maybe part of that is I think players there think they deserve more in terms of facilities. Yeah. I think they got a F for their locker room, for the training facility or the training staff, the nutrition. So those are things like that can be fixed or upgraded by the owner. And I think it's players getting frustrated with owners who go cheap in certain areas. And that's another thing you see is locker rooms being graded really low. And the Steelers had, I think I'm about already up. I haven't made it live. A short about the worst owners, but I think the Steelers were also got an F. And who else got the F?
Cardinals,
which doesn't surprise me. But Pittsburgh, Kansas City, a little surprising.
Yeah, I read a report that was saying that the owner of the Chiefs promised them new locker room, like upgrades to the locker room. And then when they came back, they just kind of changed like their seating arrangements or something like that. And so that's why he got an F.
I respect that.
I do too. But
it's new. You're in a new seat.
Yeah, it just kind of shows like none of it, like so much of the stuff I think that like as football fans we're so critical about. Like so many of us are going to sit there and look at like if the Broncos got an F in this thing, we would like alarms would be going off. Everyone would be
Yeah.
freaking out. But so much of this doesn't even correlate to actual football.
No.
And
yeah, it's funny.
that said, like the bits that do, because I do think it matters some, like, I don't know, having a good culture, having people want to be part of your organization, having good ownership and whatnot. The stuff that I think does matter, I don't know. I think you feel pretty good if you're a Broncos fan looking at this. They come in 15th overall on the weighted scale, but they're 4th in terms of ownership. And that's the only thing that can't really change, that like everything else can be fixed with money, or the head coach can be fired and replaced with a new head coach. The only thing that is really hard to change is ownership. As for everything else that can be fixed with money, you have an ownership group that's 5-6 times wealthier than the second wealthiest NFL ownership group. They tower over the other NFL franchises in that department. And not only that, but it's been consistently reported both last year and this year, immediately following the release of this poll, that ownership is embarrassed that the Broncos are ranking only 15th, that, they have a strength coach department ranked with a C grade, that they're, D+ in locker room. They find that literally embarrassing and they want to overhaul it and they want to upgrade it. They have far more resources than any other ownership group to do so. And I expect in due time, as this new facility is built in coming years in Dove Valley, as a new stadium gets built, I think all of this stuff is going to skyrocket.
Yeah, I think and I don't know, I read a lot of stuff today, but I think one of the complaints was they said it didn't feel like there was personalized plans for the players in the strength coaches.
Yeah, I read that.
I may be confusing that with another team, but those are kind of easy things to fix. Locker room getting a D, that's low, but again, like you said, very, very fixable. Nutrition, I believe, got a lot better. So B+ is not bad. And the Broncos last year, if you remember, their treatment of families also graded low. I don't know if it was a D and we went up to D+. This is an interesting one. I think there's a lot of factors that could go in there, but ownership gets an A because I think players know that they're working towards upgrading a lot of these things.
Right.
And then head coach got A-. So
yeah, a couple of the points you mentioned there. Greg Penner received a rating of 9.6 out of 10, which was the 5th best in terms of willingness to invest in the facilities. It seems like, the problem with the the treatment of families, they're one of 12 teams that don't provide a family room at their stadium. That's a concern, I guess. The locker room, 61% of players feel like the locker room is big enough. That ranks 26th. 69% feel like they have enough room. That's 27th. And then the training staff, it looks like they're middle of the road in terms of the one-on-one treatment thing.
Yeah, we're going to. It's interesting.
Oh yeah, that's right. Thank God.
Oh, and nutrition. That was the other point you were really right on. They took a huge leap up to, they were 2nd in terms of individualized food plans. So, good progress.
Cool. Hey, you like to see improvement. But Brandon, I think you're right. The biggest shock here to me was head coach. Just because, I love Shawn Payton. I'm a big Shawn Payton guy. I like a tough football coach. But also, I'm sitting from the outside looking in. So, I could imagine the players not liking Shawn Payton all that much because of how tough he is. I was shocked to see A-. I was. I think it's awesome that it is. But especially coming off of Hackett, where it really feels like, I don't know if you guys saw the Mecole Hardman quotes that came out about Hackett.
Yeah.
It's like coming off of that where it felt like Hackett was running a free-for-all. Like you could do whatever you want, to Shawn Payton, very strict. A- was shocking to me. But good to see. I like it.
Yeah. I thought I was following along with what you guys were saying, and I was, but it wasn't showing on the screen here. So I caught up. But yeah, A- overall for Shawn.
Yeah. And then I think it's notably ahead of D'Amico Ryans, a player-friendly coach also hired in this same cycle, ahead of Shane Steichen, player-friendly coach hired this same cycle. Jonathan Gannon, right? So it fits the same bill, ahead of John Harbaugh, Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, of course, off the Sean McVay player-friendly tree, ahead of Robert Saleh. That same tree once again. The Chargers with Staley. The Browns with Stefanski, again, going back to that tree. So I don't know. An A- is an A-, and I agree with Joey. I was kind of bracing for head coach. I think that's a new category this year, to grade pretty poorly relative to the league, because he is a lot more authoritarian than other head coaches. I don't love that he's ranked, 24th or whatever in terms of time efficiency. I wish that was better. But I don't know if it's an A-. The Broncos have so many other bigger problems. Like the concern with a head coach rating in this survey would be, oh my God, does the locker room hate the head coach? Are they not going to play for this head coach? An A- rating does not suggest that whatsoever.
No, and I wish they would have shown like some of the grades he graded out positively on here.
Right.
Because like efficient with their time. Okay, I already know what that problem is. Shawn takes a long time to say what he's trying to say. And I'm sure he's got stories and shit they don't really want to hear about. And then 24th in willingness to listen. Yes, I guarantee Shawn's already made up his mind. So we got to see two things, I think, that you could kind of gauge from how he handles the media. But I would like to see like what they like about Shawn Payton. And then I don't know when these votes actually go out, because somebody said they're given the stuff to vote on like in August, and they have until a certain point late in the season to fill it out. Yeah. I don't know if that's true, but I kind of have to believe like most of these grades went in before the Russell Wilson benching. I would feel more confident about Shawn too if these came out after that whole thing and the players were still like, without being judged. Like, yeah, I still believe in the head coach and what decisions he made for the team. But like, so 16th overall, and then as you can see from 2023, they did improve in a ton of areas, except for treatment of families. So, like, the one area they downgraded, strength coach, and that was they moved on from Landau, right? Was that Landau's last season was last year, and then Shawn Payton came in. They brought in new strength coach. A lot of people blamed Landau for the injuries, and I don't think that was fair or true. It was more about like the where does that go? Your training room and your training staff.
Yeah,
so I think the players liked Landau. That's the big downgrade, probably.
I will note.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
On the head coach point, it does. I just clicked through a bunch of the teams really quickly. It does look like they're only noting the time efficiency points. And what was the other one? Willingness to listen to the locker room. Clearly, there's more to it than the survey than that, because he ranked way ahead of Brandon Staley. He had an A-. Staley had a B. Staley's 23rd. Payton 17th. But in terms of those two stats, Staley's way better. 96% of Staley's players felt Staley was using their time efficiency, which ranked 10th overall. So I don't know what factors they're not publicizing, but whatever they are, it seems Shawn Payton performed very well in them.
Yeah. And look at that. Josh McDaniels, only guy to get a D.
So here's what we got going. Okay, this is what I wanted to see. Okay, yeah, another notable point. Zach, you made this earlier to me. I hope you already didn't say this, but the Saints, right? Very much the same team that Shawn Payton coached. Obviously, some differences, but look at the difference between Shawn Payton and their coach now in this rating. I think that's kind of telling. Just in, I guess, like the difference that locker room has felt since Shawn Payton has left. Of course, this has been only going for a certain amount of times, but you don't really see any very successful teams on here. I guess the Browns had a really successful year, and their coach rating is terrible.
You look at
terrible B-. So, like,
yeah, that's true.
I think most players are like comfortable with the head coaches. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if the worst grade before you get into a C plus is a B minus, and that was that was coach of the year, Stefanski.
I know.
So like, I think players have probably a little more respect for their head coaches than we want to give them credit for. And then the top teams don't really surprise you, like Dan Campbell A plus, Andy Reid A plus, O'Connell A plus, and then
Carroll, Shanahan, Tomlin. Yeah, I will say I do think there's only 7 coaches that failed to get at least a B, and I do think it's telling that the Broncos. Yes, there is generally a high level of player satisfaction with their head coaches. The Broncos are kind of in that group of, A's. There's 20, I think, 20 plus A's. That's where the Broncos are now. The Saints are in that group of bottom 7 in terms of least satisfied. And again, we don't have the comparison dating back to when Shawn Payton was there. But those are players that are used to being coached by Shawn Payton. And I think the fact that now they're not really satisfied with the new regime is, I don't know, another positive sign for the Broncos in the head coach column.
I think winning has a lot to do with that too, right? Because
definitely
Raiders coach fired, Commanders fired, Falcons fired, coach of the year anomaly. Okay, fired in New England,
almost fired.
Hot seat this year, hot seat, fired, hot seat, good. And
and then it gets
Rabel,
weird.
B plus fired, so he's an anomaly there as well. And look at Shane Steichen too, A minus.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I just like to see it, man. I like to see the Broncos going to A minus in there. And I think like with the owners, like we mentioned at the beginning of this, is the more they pour resources into this thing, why won't it improve? I think the Broncos standard at a point, just being the richest owners in the NFL and continuing to pour resources into this, I wouldn't be shocked to see them on like the top 5 of this for plenty of years to come. Like it would just make a lot of sense for it. So many of these are like training facility, weight room. Broncos are building a whole new facility.
Yeah.
Like it's going to get much better from this. So that's a really cool thing.
And I think about it. If you're a fan, this is a way you can, actually impact things. If fans are like, this is embarrassing, you have more money than God, and your facilities are like middle of the road, that's unacceptable. And put pressure on the Waltons to change things.
It's unforgivable if you're a 2-time Super Bowl winning team and your players are bitching about how shitty your facilities are.
Yeah.
Because but based on the amount that the salary cap just went up, right? We know the owners are bringing in more and more money every year. Teams are making more money in addition to that. So they got by all metrics, there's no excuse for it. And it's good to know that the Broncos' new ownership has a pulse on this. And last year was the first year these came out, and I don't think anybody that I knew was even aware they were coming out. We were just like, oh shit, we got these report card things. What are they? Oh, they're letting players give feedback about, the stuff players don't really have a lot of control over either. So, I hope it has more accountability for every team and every locker room gets a little better. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think most are pretty good. I was a little surprised like that the Dolphins were so high up there. And the Vikings as well. But it's just like a fun metric to look at.
It is.
Look at the Bengals.
Yeah, if you read some of the most interesting nuggets, or like if you click into the individual team reports, there's like the Bengals players said only half of the showers can like pump out warm water.
Cool. Hey, cold
like,
showers are good for you, so just deal with it.
That's exactly what the
said. Right?
There was a lot of that was the interesting part of this whole thing, or the Chargers one where they're talking about how terrible the food is. Like that was hilarious. You're in Los Angeles. I don't understand that whole situation at all.
Honestly, like this treatment of families thing too. Like, do not provide daycare support for players' children on game day. Why don't we look to Phillip Rivers for fucking this up for all the teams? You think any team's going to provide free daycare when you got guys like Rivers shooting out 9, 10 kids?
Yeah.
No, that's not on the team. That's Rivers, and all these quarterbacks have too many dang kids. Cromartie had like 11. That's just too much money. It's too much money.
Way too much money.
Washington got an F- in locker room, largely because players cited multiple sewage leaks inside the locker room this season.
Cool.
Multiple sewage leaks. Gross.
Oh, sorry. See, damn it. It keeps popping these up in new things. And I didn't realize it again. The Bengals. So I was looking at the treatment of families here. Damn.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. So our team is doing better at ownership.
Let's go.
Good for us. Now with news coming out, the Broncos are talking to all of the quarterbacks. They interviewed JJ McCarthy last night, right? They're gonna talk to Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and Pratt.
Mm-hmm. Michael Pratt.
What about no Rattler? No word on Spencer Rattler?
I haven't heard anything on Rattler yet. Nothing on Rattler. Just those guys. Interesting. Like not either any of the top three from what I've heard either, right? Which is interesting because there are a lot of people saying the Broncos should trade up. The Broncos should trade up. So nothing on those guys either yet.
And I will say maybe you want to keep a trade up under wraps or something. So you're going to, I don't know, be a little cloak and dagger about that. I think if you're interested in Spencer Rattler, that's a guy I want to sit down at the combine and talk to. That's one of the guys I have the most questions about. I really want to analyze his personality. That's the guy I want to get in a room with. Well, I think if you're already, having serious considerations about making a huge trade up to Drake for a Drake May, for a Jaden Daniels, you're probably already fairly comfortable with the person.
I did a whole video on Spencer Rattler, and that's why I was curious on whether or not the Broncos would talk to him. Because did you guys watch him on QB1 Under the Lights or whatever? Right. So I watched that, and I think that show is awesome, but I think it's horrible for high school football players, like to have all this attention in high school when you are like your least mature. And like that's the way Rattler came off, as immature. And then he goes to OU. He's playing okay. Gets benched for Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams comes in, looks like a fucking god in that game, leads like a crazy comeback, and then Rattler bounces around, but ends up at South Carolina playing with under Shane Beamer, running like a more pro-style offense. And it wasn't like he had numbers that lit up, your fucking box score or your stat lines, but he got better in his 2 years there and showed more like NFL caliber type play. And what I would just be curious to see, like, it feels like he would be a fit based on that, and how Shawn Payton would identify like how Spencer Rattler can process a defense, process his reads, because that's all we hear about Shawn Payton. He just wants a guy who can process. And I feel like that might be a guy who nobody's really talking about. And I'm biased because Will and I we did a video about him, so I paid more attention to him. We're working on JJ McCarthy, but I think like he's done something that's not many of the other quarterbacks have done, where he was blown up and then torn apart and then had to build himself back up. And he may not have been like the craziest QB, but I think there's something to be said for that, specifically with maturity. And you're talking about interviewing him, Zach. That's what you're kind of wanting to get a read from. Like, what'd you learn from that whole experience? Like, being humbled like that, how does that translate to how you see yourself being a pro and moving on in that direction? So I hope they do talk to him, but I also agree with you said, like, don't tip your hat if you're going to trade up. The Broncos have no leverage. We don't have the draft capital. We need every advantage we can get. And So that part of it makes sense. Are you guys like after a couple weeks more of like thinking about any of these quarterbacks? Are you excited about one versus like the others right now? Like when the Broncos are looking at these guys?
I'll co-sign your Spencer Rattler thing. I think as far as if the Broncos aren't going to take one of those top 4 guys, like Bo Nix and Michael Penix just frankly do not interest me. And then I think a lot of the mid-round options like Spencer Pratt and whatever, I think you're drafting a backup quarterback, and that's fine, but that's not the position the Broncos are in. You're in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. Like, try and swing for the fences. And Spencer Rattler was projected to be a top 10 pick at a point for a reason. And there's also a reason why he's going to go in the 4th or 5th round or whatever now, but he does have that physical ability. Like you said, you have seen him develop some inside of a pro style offense. There's the upside there that maybe he is a franchise quarterback, which if I'm being, I think it's way less likely that happens for like a Spencer Pratt, even if I think it's more likely, or Michael Pratt, that he hangs around in the league for a half decade.
Yeah. And also with Rattler is that he went to SEC school, South Carolina. Guys, if you guys go watch any of their South Carolina, their O-line stank it up against the SEC competition. And still Spencer Rattler was able to do his thing. And then obviously it feels like he has a lot of momentum right now coming off of the Senior Bowl where he was speaking really well in his pressers and stuff like that. Also won the MVP of the Senior Bowl.
Right. Yeah.
Which was really big too. It just feels like the kid has a lot of momentum. And then when you are going to the combine where you don't have a Drake May throwing the football, you don't have a Jane Daniels throwing the football, you don't have a Caleb Williams throwing the football in any of these drills, Spencer Rattler has a lot of that type of wow in him that might wow people in a combine.
He's got a live arm.
Football around. So I think ultimately I have been doing some interviews with some draft analyst people, some of my favorite draft analyst people, and I was talking to one of the guys, and he was like, he thinks he's closer to Michael Penix and Bo Nix than not. Like he's that type of prospect. So
yeah, that's fair. I think.
Yeah, so maybe he's a day 2 type of player, and that would be interesting. But my favorite, I think, is Drake May right now. It feels like he's getting all the hate on him. If he falls just close enough to the Broncos pick and the Broncos want to move up, that would be really, really exciting.
I will say
Drake May's getting like blown up by Merrill Hodge and then Kurt Benkert, who I know Kurt, and I think Kurt's evaluation of him is wrong. So I'd say that to Kurt's face. But Kurt put out like 2 or 3 tweets, and I swear to God, I've seen like everybody quote tweeting his Drake May shit, and it's giving like I would love if he fell, like you're saying, Joey. And that's the thing that's like tricky about this time. It's like all it takes is 1 or 2 people whose opinions about player X just get propelled by the Twitter sphere, and like, oh, it starts to build like a narrative, at least like in the back of your mind about dudes, and it might not be true.
Yeah.
Unless you're Zach Wilson. He rose so significantly that one offseason.
But to that point, we saw it with kind of Justin Fields on the flip. Justin Fields was the anointed quarterback 2 in that class and was kind of the media darling, the draftnik darling, much in the way Drake May is now. And they're very different prospects. But I think narratively, kind of they had that similarity. And then we started getting around this time, around the combine, and we started hearing the NFL's a lot lower on him. He might fall. And up until the draft, people were doubting it with Fields, and then it ended up happening. I wouldn't expect the same thing to happen with May, but it also wouldn't stun me. A more realistic prize, though, JJ McCarthy, I'm starting to warm up to that one. I think he has the tools you need to like succeed at the NFL level. Athletically, I think he's got a pretty strong arm, can move well. Joey's turned me on to watching him. I finally started cracking into the JJ McCarthy tape, and I like what I see. Like, I think he processes well. He's not asked to do it a lot. It is a little worrying, maybe. how infrequently they leaned on him. But when they were put in, third and long situations and they were forced to lean on JJ McCarthy, he's the best passer in this class in those obvious passing situations. So I think there's a lot there. I think he's in a pretty easy projection into the Shawn Payton offense, and he's young. There's a lot of upside. It would come down to how like a combine meeting goes and how good does he look on the board. If he looks that mentally advanced, then I'm okay with him not having like all the superhuman traits. Like, let's go. Let's see what it can be.
I'll bring up his third down stat in a sec here. But like the last thing here on Rattler, what I love about looking at his last 2 years, it's that he threw exactly 399 passes both times. And his stats increased exactly the way you want him to, where it's, dropped his picks by 4, added a touchdown, yards per attempt went up, got a little more yardage out of those attempts, and he did that all in one fewer game.
Yeah.
Like when you see a guy who has like an insane stat jump, it's a little scary if you only got like that 1 year in there.
Right.
But like you want to see a guy get a little bit better, a little bit more better. To me, like that's the natural progression versus like, oh shit, is he playing with like a first round wide receiver, like a guy who's going to be a top 5 talent in the NFL? Like those things you don't really know. But let me find that JJ McCarthy third down stat real quick.
No, I thought that last point that you made was really good too, Brandon, just because you're like Jaden Daniels, he's throwing the 2 first-round wide receivers out there. That's something you're not worrying about with Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, like this stat's like ridiculous when you're comparing it to the other quarterbacks. Like the 73%. Yeah. I think like the next best one was it 50?
Mm-hmm. It was something around there.
Where is it? It's in this athletic article somewhere. But yeah, I think like that was the first thing that made me try and think about JJ McCarthy differently. I'm not gonna fucking find it.
But
he only threw it like 6 times last year. Why the fuck would we want that guy?
I'll also say there was an classic, correlation doesn't equal causation, but there was an interesting stat put out on Twitter about what combine metrics, what combine figures have we seen correlate to quarterback success? And the number 2 indicator is age. And JJ McCarthy, as is going to be brought up ad nauseum between now and the draft, is incredibly young. I think he just turned 20, right? He's going to, or he just turned 21. He won a national championship before he could legally drink. Like that was his final college game. He's incredibly young and moldable. And I don't know. I'm excited. I also love the clip from like his freshman year. He's running downfield to like set a lead block for Blake Corum. The intangible stuff there's exciting for me, even if it's a little goofy.
Mm-hmm. That's fine. I hope he's good. Like the thing with JJ too, it's like, it doesn't look like he's going to fall to 12 at this point. Right. And that becomes the problem for the Broncos, because before JJ McCarthy became the number 4 QB in this draft, it was like, oh, the Broncos can probably have the pick that they want for quarterback at 12, because once the top 3 guys go, there's that drop off there. And we assume maybe a QB team, needy team like the Falcons ahead of them, like they feel like they might be trading for Justin Fields. We got ahead of the Raiders. But you got the Vikings there. And every day that they don't figure out something with Kirk Cousins, they appear to be more interested in quarterback. I think next to the Broncos, they're the next team that's the highest on JJ McCarthy. So in order to get that guy, and there's still some risk there, they're going to have to trade up. They're going to have to give away more assets. Right. And yes, for a quarterback, like fine, whatever you guys say, like fucking do it. If you need to trade him, get a QB, I support that. But for a team over the last 2 years who has just been ripped of premium draft capital, like having to do that again does not sound fun.
Not at all. Not at all. And yeah, the other part about that, you mentioned the teams in front of them. The teams behind them have more to trade.
Yeah, we don't have the second rounder.
Yeah, we don't have the second rounder. They just have more assets to give up to move in front of it. Like if you make a trade like that for a quarterback, and there's also a quarterback tax that the NFL throws on. If you're trading up for a quarterback, you're paying more than if you were to select a different player. The Broncos could end this draft with like no picks. They got their quarterback, but that might be about it. And then you're taking picks away from next year too. It's hard this year. Be a lot easier next year, but at the end of the day, if you find your quarterback, just go out there and get him, I guess. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Exactly. That's the case for, I think, waiting a year on the whole quarterback conundrum, or at least drafting a long-term guy. A little easier to go get the one you want. But like you said, if you get your guy, just things look a lot better. Who would have thought Houston would be in the position they are now 12 months ago? And I think part of the reason, again, you don't want to trade up is because you look at the Broncos roster, and I think they could use help from a rookie, a good draft pick at just about every single position on the roster. And so it's painful to part with some of those draft picks. But I think you could have said the same thing about the Texans. They land CJ Stroud, and it's like, oh, that receiving core looks awesome all of a sudden. And tight end looks a lot better than we thought it did. And the offensive line looks better than we thought it did. And I don't know, hit on the quarterback and everything looks a lot better.
Yeah. And so they got the Giants could take a QB, the Falcons could take a QB, Jets won't, and Vikings could. So there's like, I don't think the Giants will, but like you never fucking know. The luxury that JJ also has is because of his late rise and, the fact that he hasn't been in college for like 40 years, like those other quarterbacks. Everybody's like, he needs to sit a year. Like that's the consensus, right?
Right.
Really, pretty much every rookie quarterback should be afforded he needs a year to really develop sort of leeway. But I think like that takes pressure off him. It takes pressure off the organization that drafts him. It's okay if he's playing behind even like a very pedestrian veteran or more of a backup guy, just allowing him to sit there and get comfortable with the organization. I don't think Bo Nix or Penix have that luxury, even though he's probably going to go ahead of those guys. And even though it is specifically because like Penix has been in college for quite a while because of injuries. Bo Nix, different scenario. But if you take those guys, you expect them to be able to at least convince the coach that they're ready to start week 1. And JJ doesn't have to deal with that, which I think is an upside.
Absolutely. Like if you gave Bo Nix and Penix the Jordan Love treatment, they'd be like 30 starting their first game.
Yeah.
You can't do it. You can't do that. Whereas, if you do that with JJ McCarthy, you got yourself maybe a nice 25-year-old quarterback at the time. So it's that is, you are afforded, I think, a year, no matter what you do, whether they end up starting him and he just doesn't look good year 1. The excuse is always going to be, well, at least he's 21 years old. You know what I mean? He's still getting better. He's still improving. Yeah. What did we expect from the guy? I think that's a big advantage he has just throughout his career too. He probably gets a longer leash than Penix or Nix will. I think if those guys have a bad year 1, their team might be looking for a quarterback that very next season.
And honestly, for JJ, the best situation for him to go to is probably Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah,
Justin Jefferson.
They have less holes to fill than we do.
Right.
Yeah, right. Fuck. Throwing to Jefferson.
Drafted Addison last year.
Hawkinson. They just got to pick. They draft a running back somewhere and continue to build on Brian Flores' defense. You better pray they draft him before the Broncos do.
Right.
Broncos fans. But my take from this QB draft class too right now is none of them are going to be as good as CJ Stroud next year. I don't think people fully realize like how much he exceeded expectations and how special what he did was last year.
Historic.
We should have been talking about Stroud the way we talked about fucking Andrew Luck before him. And that's Caleb Williams has that pressure in this draft, but Stroud was just insane.
Yeah,
well, some of that
you can't bank on any of these guys being like the best rookie quarterback of all time. Like Stroud was ridiculous. You're totally right. I don't think people are grasping at just how special that year was for a rookie. It was incredible.
And I think what defined it as special was how mentally advanced he was from day one, how he was able to decipher NFL defenses and come up with the right answer and process that information as not only pre-snap, but post-snap at such a high level for such a young player. It's something we rarely see. And I think, to your point, why he was underrated, why he didn't have this like Andrew Luck or Caleb Williams pressure, wasn't even the top quarterback in his class, was because he was in an offense that didn't demonstrate it. Ohio State runs this like funky kind of option route heavy offense, and it's not one where you're going to necessarily see those mental traits on full display. In a similar sense, and everything we just said stands true, it's a historic outlier. It's something you should not bank on seeing again in this year's class. But in that similar sense, Michigan's offense is one that hasn't fully showcased JJ McCarthy's abilities. A lot of the questions around JJ McCarthy, much like CJ Stroud, isn't this guy can't do XYZ. It's we haven't seen him do XYZ and we're unsure if he can. Yeah. CJ Stroud ended up then entering the NFL and checking all those boxes with yeses. We don't know if JJ McCarthy will do that. Odds are he won't. Odds are there will be some no's, but it's possible.
Yeah, and JJ had like an insane offensive line ahead of him. So it's like great offensive line, great run game, asked to do the minimum. I mean, that's what Shawn wanted from Russ, and it would have worked if the Broncos had the run game to match. They just didn't, unfortunately. What else came out? What other news? What was what did we miss from the combine? Broncos related.
Drew Sanders.
Yeah, Drew Sanders was interesting.
Moving into edge.
I pick into him last year, and he was supposed to be an inside linebacker, and they're moving him to pass rusher going forward. What I have to say about that is we need to stop giving Vance Joseph these hybrid players. We need to stop.
Yeah. Third dude, right?
Yeah, we got to stop it. We don't like it anymore. It's his fourth because Zach pointed this out to me. Who remembers DeMarcus Walker? Kind of defensive end inside. Yeah, that was one of his first picks as a Broncos head coach. Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins,
Hassan Reddick also with the Cardinals.
Hassan Reddick, yeah, and then
shit, yeah.
We got to stop it immediately. He's going no more of those.
If you want to get a little funky with the definition, could even go Brendan Langley, the famous wide receiver / cornerback, also a member of the Vance Joseph regime who didn't work out. I swear, every Vance Joseph draft pick, if the Broncos draft a guy on defense this year, I better know exactly what position he is. I don't want any versatility. Normally versatility is a plus. I want none. I want this guy's a defensive tackle. This guy is inside. They're interested in that Notre Dame kid who's either an edge or an inside linebacker. If they draft him, I'm going to flip. I haven't studied the kid at all. He might be a superstar. If they draft that kid, I'm going to lose my mind because how are you making this mistake again? Benito had the same billing, but Browning, Sanders, and
they moved. Browning was an inside linebacker, wasn't he? That they moved to the edge.
Moved him to
Benito too. Benito played some inside linebacker at Oklahoma. Like we have enough of them. We have enough
hybrids. It's
enough slices. Get guys who play the position.
Yeah, Vance watched the JJ McCarthy make that one-handed catch in the big game there at the college football season. He might be wide receiver for the Broncos next year. I would cross my fingers if the Broncos drafted him.
He's like, it's like he's the coaching example of that Colts fake punt play they did, where you try to get a little too creative and it doesn't work. Yeah. And if the Broncos do take defensive tackle, and he's just like, I've never seen a defensive tackle play safety, but I think we can make it fucking work.
No, Vance Joseph is salivating watching that Travis Hunter tape. They might try and hand in a Travis Hunter draft card.
Oh yeah.
They might. It's there. I'm extra annoyed about the Sanders thing because like he looked raw at inside linebacker, but you expected him to. It's a new position to him. The issue with him was like processing. And again, you expect that. I don't get why you draft a guy who you expect to have processing issues. He has processing issues, and then you give up on the project entirely and then put him at edge where we saw him at edge this season. And he looked terrible. Like Penix Sewell bullied him. He looked like a peewee football player. And granted, Sewell does that to a good number of people, but it's a lot easier for me to imagine Sanders like spending some time at inside linebacker, the NFL game slowing down for him, and him becoming a really good inside linebacker than it is for me to even imagine him becoming like a halfway decent edge. It's so frustrating.
It's like the inside linebackers not deep for the Broncos. Are going to lose Josie Jewell. They have Jonas Griffith coming back, but like was injured last year. You never know about injuries. So it's like they took an area that was thin and put him to another area that was thin. And it was just like,
doesn't do anything.
And I understand last year was kind of weird, but moving forward, like I would want him as just your regular linebacker, because that seems like where we need more. Draft an edge. That's not an easier position to find, but like, this college player's edge. He's going to play edge here, and that's what we draft him for.
Yeah, it's what he thought he was going to play too. Frankie Films on Twitter, he pulled up a clip of Drew Sanders in the Broncos locker room. Yeah, I'm envisioning myself as an inside linebacker at the next level. I am playing that position, and that's was the Broncos' plan for him initially. It just hasn't worked out in year 2, which is kind of shocking.
And to your point about drafting an edge instead, now the Broncos, like, they have 4 edge rushers on a rookie deal. They're not making another big investment at edge rusher probably this season. And the Broncos are going to, I think, lose out as a result. They'd be much better off drafting an edge at some point in this draft, whether that be the first round or wherever, than they're going to be trying to find Josie Jewell's replacement in the 3rd or 5th round, because you're going to take that mid-round inside linebacker, throw him in there, and guess what? He's going to have the exact same problems Drew Sanders had. He's going to struggle a little with processing because it's a mentally taxing position and he's a rookie. It's mind numbing to me. It makes no sense. Like, draft an edge to play edge and then keep your inside linebacker learning inside linebacker rather than restarting the process at inside linebacker and asking an inside linebacker to play edge. It's so backwards.
I literally watched your mind boggle. Oh, well, they'll do something. Probably, unless they draft a quarterback, then we're in the exact same situation on defense. They're going to sign Shaq Barrett. It'll be okay.
Yeah, hopefully.
That'll give us a veteran presence.
Mm-hmm.
He can start. He can rotate. I was just writing about Shaq. He had 49 pressures last year. Down for Shaq. Still better than a lot of teams had. So, including the Broncos, I believe.
Absolutely. And then Drew Sanders really won't play.
Yeah. Put him back in the inside. Bring back Shaq. He's got a home here in Colorado. It makes too much sense.
No, guys, the answer is right in front of us. I can't believe you're overlooking it. Bring Shaq back, put him at inside linebacker.
Bring Von Miller back too.
Yeah.
And change inside his position as well.
Yeah.
Finally let him play quarterback like he asked.
Well,
he can hype himself up.
If we could go back in time and have him start as quarterback in that Kendall Hinton game, I would totally do that.
That'd be fun.
All right. That was enough. We did enough. We did a good job, right, guys?
Yeah, I think so. I think this was a solid pod.
Again, check out Let's Talk Broncos here on YouTube. Go subscribe to their channel. And we'll be back next week. Probably.
I don't know.